It is wonderful to be here at St. Cross this morning. Thank you so much for having me. I've known Paul and Angela, who were saying earlier, a long time. We were a lot younger and slimmer and less grey when we first met. But it's great to be here ministering together. It is really such a joy. I know at St. Cross you are on your eco-church journey, and I believe you are approaching your eco-church bronze award, which is really great. There are 3 awards: bronze, silver and gold. Bronze is where you get going, you find out what you're doing already, and you make some small adjustments, and you start on your eco-church journey. Silver, it becomes more involved, and everybody in the congregation starts to know about what's going on, and you get a little bit more involved. Gold is hard to achieve. Somebody comes and assesses you. It's like having the Ofsted inspector in, and you and the whole congregation are involved, and you are involving the community as well. But it's fantastic that you are on this journey. As Paul said, I am not only the part-time diocesan environment advisor, but I also minister as a self-supporting ordained minister in Runcorn, so I know exactly what it's like, struggling to pay your parish share, trying to persuade everybody that they need to work towards eco-church. So my feet are definitely on the ground as well. So I'm trying not to preach from my ivory tower. This morning, I want to talk to you about dreams and nightmares. When we think about the climate crisis and caring for creation and the decrease in biodiversity, our help in that direction can seem like a huge mountain to climb, an overwhelming task, a nightmare, you might say. However, a colleague of mine, he was a colleague of mine in Cornwall. He did my job in Cornwall, and then he took the best job in the history of the world. He is now the chaplain to the surfers in Cornwall. Isn't that an amazing job? But before he went to do that amazing job, he said this: when we think about the climate crisis, we need to switch our mindset. Instead of considering it as something we fear and running away from a nightmare, flip our thinking and imagine a new future. Every tiny step that we make is bringing us towards a dream of a restored planet. Imagine the dream. Villages and towns where there's no pollution, children don't have asthma or breathing problems, seas are stocked with fish, coral and underwater plants sequester carbon, there's enough food for everyone, clean green energy that stop harmful gases being pumped into the atmosphere. Imagine every step we take is a step towards that dream. I like to think of it of a vision of a new heaven here on earth. Much more powerful to run towards the dream, I think, than to run away from the nightmare. And every little step that we take in creation care is a step towards that dream and a vision of a new heaven here on earth. Thank you, Mike, for reading that passage from Matthew. It is "Consider the lilies," but it was the Message version translation. And I've used it particularly because it talks about fashion. And it paraphrases. It says, if you decide for God living a life for God worship, it follows that you don't fuss about whether the clothes in your closet are in fashion. There's more to your outer appearance than the clothes you hang on your body. Look at the birds, free and unfettered, and not tied down to a job description, careless in the care of God, and you count far more to him than the birds. Now, over the past 12 months, I've been doing a lot of thinking about sustainable fashion. I've even found a book about fashion theology. Who knew there was such a thing? One important thing is that fast fashion is a reflection of society. It captures the mood, the values and the changes in culture and economics. Another thing I found out is that there are enough clothes in the world to dress the next 6 generations. So not me or my children or my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren, my great-great-grandchildren and my great-great-great-grandchildren already. More clothes than ever are being discarded. However, we know children are struggling to put their children in the correct school uniform, and people on the edges of war, even in Europe and in the Calais jungle, have not got the right clothes. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't have new clothes or even enjoy dressing as individuals or putting something smart on, but the whole industry has got out of control. And fashion is reflecting a change in culture and economics. We're holding up fashion as an industry this morning, but it could be any industry that we are talking about. Fast fashion is cheap in cost, cheap in quality, cheap in materials, bad for the environment, and is peddled as the thing that's going to make you cool and trendy, up to date and relevant. And new clothes are bombarding the websites weekly. How can we ever keep up? We were saying earlier on today, do you remember in the old days when you used to go to M&S, other shops are available, and they used to have those grey bags, paper bags, didn't they? And you could go in February and see a blouse that you liked. You could save up, you could go back in April and buy it. No longer. You see it, you buy it, because it's not going to be there in April. A new blouse will be on the shelf instead. Cheaply made fashion means very little cost for those who are making the clothes and high margins for the retailers and the middlemen. Cheaply made means they will soon fall apart and not be suitable for passing on to somebody else. We also chatted this morning about growing up in somebody else's clothes. I don't know about you, but we had some older twins that were a friend of my uncle's. They had lovely clothes, and so did I. I wore their clothes most of my childhood. Paul says he's the oldest, so he used to pass his on to everybody else. But now cheaply made means that they fall apart, and they're not ready to pass on. Cheaply made means that we pass them over quickly as well and move on to the next thing. Fast fashion has embraced the ultimate capitalist culture, with the wealth of the production system being held in the hands of only a few people. And many clothes, of course, are made from plastic or are oil-based. They're difficult to break down. Plastic cannot be ultimately recycled and lasts for hundreds and hundreds of years. So what our clothes are made of has an environmental impact. If you buried your cotton shirt or your woolly jumper in the garden, in a few weeks it will have started to decompose. If I had put my polyester thermal vest in the garden, it would still be there in a few hundred years. The emphasis on ever-changing trends and fashion means that we're rushing to keep up. If we can't or don't choose to keep up, the media and the magazines label us as out of step and out of fashion and missing the mark. It truly does sound like a nightmare, doesn't it? Time to cause a pause for a moment. Yes, of course we all need clothes, and we like to wear something that fits us and draws out our best features, but at what cost? Time to slow down and time to take stock. Back to our passage from Matthew. If God gives such attention to the appearance of wildflowers, most of which are never seen, don't you think he'll attend to you, take pride in you, do his best for you? What I'm trying to do here is to get you to relax, to not be so preoccupied with getting, so you can respond to God's giving. People who don't know God and the way he works fuss over these things, but you know both God and how he works. Steep your life in God reality, God initiative, God provisions. Don't worry about missing out. You'll find all your everyday human concerns will be met. Wise words from the gospel today. Take time to slow down. Make some considered choices about the way we live, not driven by marketing teams, consumerism and capitalism, but by a considered life, thinking of others and the planet, and in step with God. Let's realise the riches we have in each other, to value the people and not the clothes they wear. How often do we greet somebody and say, "Ooh, you look nice," when we should really say, shouldn't we, "How lovely to see you." Understanding how wearing clothes and looking good is fine, but also making sure that it's an opportunity that's available to everyone. Let's welcome everyone into our Christian family, whatever they look like, whatever they wear, wherever they shop. Let's think about how we might be influenced by the corporate machine and see if we can think about how we might honour others in our choices. Wise words of Jesus to make us think about how we might have been sucked in to aspiring a lifestyle that has been designed for us by marketeers and capitalists, a lifestyle that benefits only a few. Time to consider for a moment what Jesus tells us about what the Father cares for and what God considers to be beautiful. Now, my purpose this morning is not to make us all feel guilty. We're focusing on the fashion industry, but it could be any industry we're talking about, proving to be a nightmare not just for humans, but for the whole of creation. Time to pause and take some steps towards the dream rather than just running away from the nightmare. The fashion industry and many other ways we live are causing harm to the planet. Bishop Graham Usher, he is the lead bishop for the environment, and he says there is an invitation to all of us to live simpler and humbler so that others, especially the poorest and the rest of creation, may survive and thrive. That's the way we head towards the dream of creation that is cared for and thriving. Now back to Ben and the surfers. Ben suggested that we switch our mindset, we run towards the dream, we take those little steps towards a better eco-lifestyle. Running away from the nightmare, no, run towards the dream. And the reason why I asked for that psalm to be read this morning, there was that one verse in Psalm 104 where Leviathan is happily playing in the sea and the ships are passing to and fro. I'm not saying we need to get rid of commerce. We all need to survive and grow things and buy things. But that verse in that psalm gives an image of both creation surviving happily, Leviathan playing in the sea, and the commerce ships going to and fro. There is a harmony together. That is the dream, isn't it? Where everyone and the whole planet thrives. So I encourage you here at St. Cross to take up your eco-church journey. We all start with small steps. The one I always tell everybody about is get fair trade tea, coffee and sugar as a basic. You can go to the co-op, to Sainsbury's. If you're really posh, you can go to Marks and Spencer's and buy your fair trade coffee. Tell everybody else that's what you're drinking. Why are you drinking fair trade coffee? because everybody in the production line gets a fair wage. The people who produce the cocoa beans or the coffee beans, they get a fair trade supplement. Then they can use that in their town or village for education or for better growing. And the world becomes a better place. What we don't want is a few people doing things perfectly. What we need is everybody thinking about putting an environmental layer on everything that we do. And companies thinking about profit, planet, and people in conjunction together. So thank you, St. Cross, for starting out on your eco-church journey. And thank you for making progress. And I encourage you to keep going. And when you get that bronze award, celebrate and let everybody know the steps you've made, and then keep going. So thank you very much. And I encourage you to keep on going. Amen.